What's going on, guys? This is episode 8 of Tech Habit Weekly. This is being recorded on August 7th, 2013. I apologize for not being here last week. I'm actually still kind of recovering from some kind of a crazy freak summer sinus infection slash cold. So I apologize once again for not being here, and thanks to Shevin for taking over last week. But with me today is Dontae, which I'm sure you guys all know by now. He was also there last week, so once again, thank you, sir, for taking over lead host. I guess he did fair enough job. I guess we'll keep him around, I guess. But today, of course, we have some Apple stuff for you. A lot of people, we have been getting a lot of feedback that a lot of the new stuff that we talk about is Apple related, and that's because we love Apple, and Apple is very relatable in all of today's technology. You know, whenever a company comes out with a phone or a computer, the geek in us and the Apple geek in us tries to compare it to Apple's offering and say what's better, what's worse. So we're not really Apple fanboys or anything, but we love Apple and we love comparing things to Apple because we think Apple does a great job. So if you have a problem with that, I'm very sorry. We do try to mix it up a little bit though. Today we have some Hackintosh stuff. We have some stuff about some other phones. So without rambling anymore with this crazy long intro, let's go ahead and get started and talk about the new iOS Beta 5 that just came out, I believe, yesterday, Tuesday. And so Dontae, go and kick us off with that. Did you install it on your iPhone 5?
Oh, yes. As soon as I heard that the Beta 5 was out, I went to my nearest Wi-Fi network and was like, you know what, I need to get this. The entire download's only 150 megabytes, and there's a lot of bug fixes in this particular one, at least ones that I've noticed. One in particular, in between where you have your dialer there, and you have your numbers down at the bottom where you could get to your contacts and favorites and your voicemail and things like that. That part was like very, very hard to access. I mean, there was a black bar across the bottom where if you barely hit it in the right spot, you could get it, but it was very annoying. I mean, you couldn't even read it, and that has since then been fixed. Another thing is, I've noticed that there's been some different fonts and things in this particular update, and honestly, I feel like usually with every update, except for maybe Beta 2, that I've been getting a little more responsiveness out of my phone and whatnot, and definitely from the last. I don't know if anyone else has been having this problem with their. I'm running an iPhone 5, and my battery life was horrible on the last beta for some reason. I don't know why, but it seems to be greatly improved this time around. And we'll just see what else is going on. I didn't notice any new features while combing through it, when I did, but as far as, like I said, the fonts and the different bugs and some of the overlapping text and different things like that have been fixed. It's still not released yet. It's still in beta stages. So I haven't personally found another bug yet. I'm going to be definitely combing through and just looking at everything, making sure things work right, via, Bluetooth and, your different fonts and overlays and, different colors and things. I've also noticed that they've changed some of the features. FaceTime audio, I don't know if anyone's used it yet, but FaceTime audio, myself and Terrell, our producer, were on a FaceTime audio call, and I noticed that in the last update, my backlight wouldn't turn off if I was on FaceTime audio. Well, now that's been fixed, so that was a huge feature because, if you're using that, and you're just draining your battery. So I don't know if you've noticed anything, Bob, in this particular update that's been different from the last one.
Other than general performance, not really. I mean, there's a few little things like, for example, here I'll go ahead and clear my notifications so I can show you guys this. But at the bottom of the lock screen the last time around, there was like a little arrow here. Like it was like pointing upwards to let you know that you could slide up. Now that's not an arrow. It's just like a little masking. It's like a little line there. And so that was confusing a lot of people. Like I'd give them this phone that had debate on it, and their natural tendency, because they saw that little upwards facing arrow, was to slide upwards. And then they wouldn't slide to unlock it, instead bring up the control panel. They're like, what is this? And so little things like that throughout the OS have been rectified. And I believe that's better. It's not as confusing. Also, if you get like a drop-down notification if someone texts you, there's also that same line that appears down there that lets you know, like in your mind, that you can swipe that down to see more options. So little subtle things like that. I also noticed that in the settings, all of the little icons have changed. So if we go navigate here to settings, we now have something that looks like this. They're not just like those little thin blue icons anymore that did look very beta. Now it's more colorful and more filled in, so it looks a little bit better. So other than some general refinements, like you said, some bug fixes, I really haven't noticed many features, but the general, I guess, like stability of the phone and its fluidity just throughout using it definitely has improved. And it's interesting that this beta was it came out like a week after the before did, instead of like 2 weeks. Do you think Apple did that for a reason or something?
I think they actually were probably done with it a little sooner than we may have thought, only because of, you got to realize, with the dev center being hacked and things like that. I think they were already ahead of it, and that's why this release came so fast. And I think they just were careful about spacing it out in between getting some of their bug fixes and other things finalized for this particular beta. But also, I think that with this particular beta coming out right now, and with being just a week apart from the last one, I believe that there may be more betas to come. I believe there might be at least 2 more betas before this particular software is finished for iOS 7. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a beta 7 get released in the next 2 weeks to maybe 3 weeks out. And we'll just have to see what goes from there. But like you said, in between all the different refinements and the text overlays and things like that, I haven't seen a noticeable difference besides my battery. My battery's been great now. And we'll just have to see what comes up for iOS 7 Beta 6, if they're going to come out with that, and just go from there. But I really think they do have something going on. Also, another note, it's been said that Apple has taken out the file that was marked. We covered this on Tech Habit Weekly, where they had the fingerprint scanner in there. They said that they took that file out, and I don't know if this means that they're going to not do that in the next and upcoming iPhone, or is it something they're just kind of hiding because maybe that slipped and someone found that plist file and they're like, oh no, we better get that out of there, because of course it's going to raise more speculation, because everyone knows, at least if you've been following our show or following different tech news feeds and things like that, that they've had that thumbprint scanner in their document. So usually when it's in there, usually it comes out. Now, like I said, just because they took it out doesn't mean that it won't come. Maybe it's just to, bring more speculation to say, hey, maybe they won't, and let that die down for a while. I'm not sure, because you got to realize this is going to be some next generation tech that they're trying to bring out. So you don't want that to leak out. And basically it did, if it's true, if that's what their plan was. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe they put that in there so it could be found, and just to get more buzz swirling about that. This is a company, and they are in the business of making money. So speculation and rumors and things like that, this is what sells, phones and whatnot. This is what keeps the anticipation for your consumers to buy your product. If you always keep the word iPhone, Apple in your mouth and on your mind, it's going to be something that makes Android users, or even people who didn't really care who they were on or what they had before, as long as they had call or text before, be able to maybe jump ship to one side or the other.
Yeah, and I mean, we've touched on this in the past too, that a lot of hype is good for a company, but it can also hurt a company too. So you don't want to hype it up too much. And that whole fingerprint scanner is definitely curious. We'll have to see where that goes. But as far as just where we're at today with Developer Preview 5, we have the ability to turn on and off access to Control Center within specific apps. So if you're maybe give your phone or your iPad to your kid or something, and you don't want them to access that menu while they're using this app, you can hide Control Center so he can't turn off Wi-Fi and things like that. There's also a new slide to power on and off button, or sorry, just the power off button rather. And it doesn't bring up like a whole new interface. Now it's just like a little slide bar. You just swipe it. It's pretty cool. There's also little things like some new in-call buttons, and there's some things like that. New Twitter icons. So nothing groundbreaking, but other than the performance of the actual phone, not a huge update, but performance is key. So I'm not going to say that's not important, because it's actually very important. So moving on to Apple's next beta, now we're going to talk about Mavericks. Dontae, have you played with Mavericks at all? Not even just like the latest, but in general.
I haven't played with it yet, and I'm still kicking myself over it because there's been so many updates already. I was just in between trying to free up a drive. I have a lot of external drives, but I'm trying to free up a drive enough to be able to dedicate it completely to Mavericks. As a matter of fact, after this podcast, I'm going to go ahead and start getting, especially with this new developer preview that's come out. Now, a few things about this particular developer preview that's out right now. Of course, we all know that Mavericks is still in the developmental stages, coming from Apple, and this particular update is 1.72 gigabytes for this update, and it's a little bit bigger than all the previous updates that I've been reading and that I've been hearing from Terrell. He's been running them back to back to back to back. So, there's a lot of things that are still coming with Mavericks, and I'm definitely waiting for that release. Now, one thing everyone talks about is moving in between spaces and different things on their monitors, because now I think Apple is finally listening to their consumers and knowing that that certain users have more than one dedicated monitor to use, and it would be nice to always be able to switch your spaces in between monitors instead of it switching whole screens. I mean, I have that problem right now running Mountain Lion. I mean, like as we speak on this podcast, I say a good 13, 14 things open at a time, and that's just, I'm a very heavy user with my computer. I'm surprised my Mac Mini can actually handle the load, but it would be nice to be able to switch in between screens and things like that. And definitely that, it works on the developer preview. And one thing I'm curious to see is one day I'm going to take my Apple TV and try to set up a third monitor with that Apple TV to see what happens with there. But with the release of this, normally everyone knows, and if you don't know by now, that normally Apple releases the iOS 7 alongside of Mavericks updates. So for the developer preview, however, and it's been really good. Terrell says he's been getting really good performance out of it. Every beta has fixed problems that he has noticed, and but I personally haven't messed with it, but I will tonight. So I will have it installed here on my Mac Mini and go from there and give you guys a little better update maybe on our next episode of Tech Habit Weekly. But if anyone else on the chat or the IRC or anything have been using this, we'd like to get your comments and things that you may have seen or may haven't seen within these particular beta updates and things as we go on. Now, Bob, I know you're running it. Now, what have you noticed in between?
Honestly, between the betas hasn't been that much because even the first beta was rock solid. I mean, I installed it even on my Hackintosh here, and it was flawless. I mean, everything just worked. It was actually very great. Now, one thing about Mavericks that I think I would take most advantage of, besides like the whole multi-monitor thing, is no one knows here on my YouTube channel yet, but I actually just picked up a 2009 MacBook here, and it's an older machine that doesn't have the specs of my Hackintosh or multiple displays or anything, but the different efficiencies that come with Mavericks is what's really going to make it an awesome choice, especially for this computer. It doesn't have, say, for example, the biggest battery in it. It doesn't have the best processor. And so with the technologies that Mavericks has, it's going to really increase that battery life by putting other tasks that aren't in your active window down on your CPU. So your CPU is not always being revved up for things that you really aren't using. So little things like that. Overall, it's just been very stable. Today they added the iBooks Beta 5 to it, or not iBooks Beta 5, but they added iBooks 2 Beta 5. And so overall, it's been just an absolute rock solid OS. I actually have it right down here. It's kind of hard to see, but that's rocking Mavericks. I mean, it works just great with the multi-touch trackpad, everything like that, the spaces. It works just the way you'd think. And for a developer preview, I think it's ready to be shipped. I mean, the performance really is that good. And it's really good to see that Apple, this is a 2010 machine. And, that's almost a 4-year-old computer now. And Apple's still supporting it pretty well. And Mavericks runs great on it. So, yeah, definitely be sure to let us know what you think in the comments down below about Mavericks. If you have a Hackintosh, will you be installing it, sticking to Snow Leopard or Mountain Lion or whatever have you? Be sure to let us know down in the comments. But now, speaking of Hackintosh stuff, actually we have some Hackintosh news. And now today, Chimera 2.1.2 was released. Dontae, do you know anything really about Chimera?
Chimera, yes. I used to build my own Hackintoshes and things in the day. Not really, wasn't that long ago. And, that was an essential tool, just like UniBeast and MultiBeast and things like that, to be able to get your computer that's basically, and I'm only going to say Windows-based only because it is not exactly Apple certified. Apple has proprietary parts in their laptops and desktops and things like that. But that is what helped fix some of the issues that you ran into, some of the cloning and different, spoofing of devices and things like that. But now it's to the point where Hackintosh guides are so intuitive and so specific now that you can pretty much be an amateur and build a Hackintosh and have one working within an hour of setup. And most of that time is really just installation and making a USB thumb drive to do your installation on. But with this update now, since I'm not really into the Hackintosh community right this second, I'm actually planning on building another one here soon. I want to build a Haswell Hackintosh here soon and see what happens from there. So I've been out of the loop for a long time as far as those different programs. So I'm going to actually use your expertise on this particular subject, and because I'm sure you can better adhere the listeners and the viewers on YouTube about this particular subject, because I'm not using it currently.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as far as Chimera goes, the bootloader, it's been pretty rock solid. I mean, they can't really add much more to it at this point. That's really going to make it a lot better. I mean, there's always been people that, depending on what their hardware is, they have some booting issues or something like that. But for the most part, all the different kernel flags like graphics enabler, NPCI, all that different stuff, it works very well. I mean, my machine here, I've been rocking Chimera for close to 3 years now, and as they update it, I don't really notice much different from the last one, and it just adds a little bit more support, maybe for a wider range of hardware. But overall, Chimera is Chimera. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people prefer like Clover or Chameleon, whereas Chimera is just like a branch of Chameleon, so it's very identical. I shouldn't say that, but it's very similar to that of Chameleon. But Chameleon is basically Tony Mac's version, or Chimera is basically Tony Mac's
version, right?
Of Chameleon. So, I mean, besides the Chimera, we also saw a multi-beast update today. Now, this is 5.4.3 as of today's recording, and so really all they really added was that they added that new version of the bootloader in there, as long with some different visible changes. For example, they added, I'm just reading here, drivers and bootloaders, optional modules. And now of the optional modules, you have file, NVRAM 1.1.2, 1.1.3. Honestly, I'm not even sure what those do. I haven't really played around with this yet, so I haven't got my hands on it, but it's hard to see what that would do right off the bat. So if you guys in the comments have experience with this, let us know. But updated Easy Beast, there's just different versions, different little bug fixes. So this isn't a monumental release. This doesn't bring like support for next generation stuff. Although we have seen some Haswell builds. I mean, there are a lot of people, for example, if you watch Insanely Great Mac on YouTube, he has Haswell hardware, but he can't seem to get it to boot without safe mode. So there's still little things that work and little things that don't work. But that's next generation hardware, and so there's different bootloaders to test for that, because Tony Mac doesn't like talking about next generation stuff. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But I mean, these updates can't hurt. They're not, like I said, they're nothing monumental. They're not humongous updates or anything. But if you have a Hackintosh, feel free to download them and just be up to date. Honestly, it's really about it. All right, now we're going to move on to the section of our show for the brief tech stories. The first one we have for you: Android gets Find My Phone feature 3 years after iPhone does. Why do you think this happened so long after?
Honestly, I have no natural idea of why in the blue hell that they don't have this particular feature. This is something that a lot of people use. I mean, I've personally used this just to see if it worked, and it worked very well, and on my iPhone anyway. And I'm really not sure, because as we all know, Android is software, not a phone. There's way more Android phones than there are iOS phones. So I would think that your greater chance of losing a cell phone versus being an iPhone or any other handheld device that's running Android operating system would be greatly higher on Android's end. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure what took them so long, but there's an article here that says that all of the Android devices will finally be able to reap the benefit of this particular Android device manager program that has this built in. It's called Find My Droid, is apparently what they're calling it. And real original. So anyway, basically Google announced this on Friday, August 2nd, about this particular service that's coming to Android. And it's just, to me, I just think it's very far overdue to have this particular service. And they say that all Android versions up to 2.2 Froyo, so anything before Froyo, meaning Eclair, Cupcake, things like that, they won't be able to support that feature. But to me, with them being on, Jelly Bean and all these different, softwares that are out, it's just way overdue. Number one, I don't know if they were thinking that, I don't know, maybe these phones are just kind of, expendable. I can go outside and trip over 4 or 5 Android phones, or something like that. But, in my personal opinion, I think it kind of hurt them. I honestly, they haven't had it for so long. They should have just not had it at all. That's what I'm thinking, because now it raises that question. Wait a minute, we didn't have that before. And that's not to say that people actually cared about it, or people would actually use. I know people would use it, but how many people use the Find My Phone on their iPhone? I'm not sure. But I just know that with this particular software finally being integrated, to me, it's almost like a shot in the foot, not a plus for their company, only because it raises the question to people. Well, they didn't have that before, because you got to realize there's going to be 1,000 features on your phone that you don't normally use every single day. I can tell you right now, my iPhone 5, I don't use the voice memos. I just don't. Well, there's some other guy, I mean, he loves it. So something having a feature like, Find My Phone, it's just essential to me to have that convenience of having it, and even if I use it once or just twice or never, at least I have the convenience of having it. But when you just don't have it at all, and it was just a simple software fix, I think that was a little lazy on Android and Google as a whole company. And I don't know, what your idea is on it, but I think it's kind of worthless to even mention now. But
my big thing is that they add all this other stuff like scrolling with your eyes, but they don't add something as fundamental as finding your phone when it's lost. I mean,
I found out now they're going to have, and now don't quote me on this, it's going to be eyelash unlocker. You can take this thing right to your eyelash, swipe twice, bet money, and unlocks your phone. And I understand exactly what you're saying. It's just not. I mean, like you said, they come out with all these different software, all these, these things that are supposed to be groundbreaking technologies, and then now this latest from Android, Find My Droid. I'm like, really? I mean, that's the best you got. That's just like saying, you know what, multimedia messages. It's like, come on now. I mean, it's been too late, for this. And usually now, if it's something nice, if it's something great, believe me, I'll praise anything about technology, because that's why we're here. Like I said before, Tech Habit Weekly is one of the only places you can have a habit without having a 12-step program. So it's one thing to have something groundbreaking, first, and then another to bring something so small that should have been done years ago after. I mean, that shouldn't have, to me, it shouldn't have gotten any press. I would have just put that in there and just made a slight, just talk about it a little bit, and that's it. But they're making like a big announcement about this like it's brand new.
Yeah, Apple tends to be the total opposite. People are like, okay, well, what you have is great, but update it. Like, add these crazy features that will just be on Twitter for a week and then disappear. So Apple seems to get it, that people want the fundamental things that, if my phone is stuck in my couch cushion somewhere, I want it to play a sound so I can find it. That's baked right into the phone, and I can access it from, a tablet or a computer. That's awesome, and that's something that Apple's had baked into their OS for a long time. And Android tends to have all these like gimmicky features and things that are cool for a week, to show your buddies, but yo, check out my new phone. But then a month later, you're selling it, or you lost it, you can't find it. So, it's hard to really, like you said, it's hard to praise that, because it should have been there. So. We're going to leave it at that. Tell us what you think down in the comments. Now we're going to shift gears from third all the way into fourth, and we're going to talk about USB and Thunderbolt. Now, USB the Alliance, the USB Alliance finalizes 10 gigabyte per second specifications as USB 3.1. Now, my question is, this is right up there with Thunderbolt 1. That was 10 gigabytes per second. Do you see more people, go, say, for example, the new Mac Pro obviously doesn't have this, or at least not that we know of yet. So they're packing Thunderbolt rather than this USB 3, but USB is more standard. So do you think that Thunderbolt would take off more than this USB 3.1? Or do you think, because we already have USB devices everywhere, do you think that this is going to take off instantly better?
Honestly, in my honest opinion, for cost efficiency and things that are happening in the manufacturer's world right now, as far as availability for things that are like this, I believe that USB 3.1 would take off a little better than Thunderbolt, only because, number one, it's razor sharp, super fast speed. USB has been out forever. I mean, I can't name. Well, maybe I can name some computers that don't have it, but since it's jumped into the market, it's been here and it's been to stay. I mean, I don't know how many things. I mean, I'm looking at, a million things just on my desk here that are USB powered. I have flash drives. I've got a 10-port USB hub over here. I have a Sony HD camera that has, an extension to be able to go out to USB, and actually it has a small USB sticking right out the side here, that way I can have quick access.
It's everywhere.
Right, it's everywhere. I mean, it's not going to go away. It's like the internet or something. Once it's in there, that's it. Now, I can tell you right now that with Thunderbolt, being a very, very, very advanced technology coming from Apple, I can see more people and more manufacturers adopting that technology. But you have to realize, Thunderbolt's kind of proprietary at this particular stage, only because it's so new. And if you're going to take a company that's going to switch gears that drastically, I know they will, But you got to realize there's a lot of cost in between that, to go from going from USB. Now, got to realize USB 3.0 is out right now. My 2012 Mac Mini has USB 3.0, and I don't know if you guys can see, but back here I have my hard drives, and the terabyte one that's back here is set up USB 3.0, and it's super fast. I mean, I like it just because I'm so used to USB 2.0.
Yeah, exactly.
But you got to realize, I think it's a lot easier to upgrade just in speed, but keeping the same form factor than going to gigantic speeds in completely different form factor.
Yeah.
So for companies like your external hard drive makers and things like that, you got to realize, you got to look at everything as USB. My mic that I'm talking to is USB powered, and like I said, flash drives and things. When you change everything like that on a full scale, and for the aspect of around for customers and consumers and people like that, and then you got to think about the manufacturers to get the parts for these things.
Yeah.
It's a greater risk, I think, to switch over to Thunderbolt right now because it's so new. But USB, like I said, it's not going away. It's only getting faster and faster. So I can definitely see this taking off because, number one, it doesn't change. Like I said, it doesn't change the form factor of things that we currently have, like laptops and desktops and things like that. It'll be the same port, the same thing you're used to. You're not looking at something like, well, how does this plug in? Because it's a form factor we've seen before. So we'll see what happens with this in the meantime. But Thunderbolt, of course, is another time, like 2 times faster than this. So we'll see. So we'll just have to see in between the data and video and things like that that's available for Thunderbolt, or maybe see what else that USB 3.1 can handle and what it can do instead of just data speed. Then maybe they'll have some competition there. But definitely form factor beats drastic change any day. We got people that are upset about the new redesign of the Mac Pro, because of expandability. We've got questions like, what about capture cards? What about expandable PCI devices and things like that? I'm not sure what they're going to do, but I know some companies, because they still want that market and want that money, they'll change.
Oh, yeah.
But it's definitely going to be a cost.
Yeah, it seems USB is kind of the more convenient way to go. Like if you just have a flash drive, you just want to copy something, you get USB. If you just have a little microphone that you don't want to hassle with any XLR cables or anything, USB. But for creative professionals that need power, and one thing that the Thunderbolt has going for it, besides being twice as fast with Thunderbolt 2, it could drive displays. It could even drive like external graphics cards, things like that, capture cards, and that's something that USB doesn't have, at least at this point, but it probably won't, at least for a very long time. So that's something that differentiates Thunderbolt from USB. USB to me is more convenience, whereas Thunderbolt is more creative professional. Not everyone needs Thunderbolt, and most people do need USB, and a lot of people in this world will be lost if these guys disappeared. I mean, people just wouldn't know what to do.
I mean, just think of the chargers on some of your, well, pretty much all of your Samsung phones and things like that. Since the cable that charges it actually doubles as the data cable in between it, well, they're going to make it universal to something that's already out, which is USB. So whether it's mini B or micro, size port, or micro USB or something like that, the other end of it's still going to be USB. I can definitely see them having, USB ends, with the higher data 3.1 and things to things higher, because it's the same form factor. But to have micro USB to Thunderbolt, I'm not sure. But we'll just see what happens in the upcoming weeks and months, and see what happens with that as it becomes more mainstream. And just like as usual, guys, just leave us a comment down at the bottom or in the chat, and we can figure out what your guys' opinions on that particular technology as well.
What he said. Moving on to the next story. We have a dual SIM Samsung Galaxy S4 with an Exynos 5 Octa processor inside and dual SIM. Now, Dontae, why would you want 2 SIMs in a phone?
Now, for me, personally, I wouldn't need 2 SIMs. Only thing I could think of would be the best thing to have 2 SIMs for, and just say, hey, you meet a nice young lady at a bar sometime and say, hey, here's my number, and then you can kind of keep your contacts this way and your contacts that way. And that's just a more practical sense for people like average people like myself. But when you dig deeper into it, I can actually see some benefits for it. When I first thought about this particular article, I was thinking, this is stupid. Why would I want 2 numbers? I don't want half the people calling my main number. So But I started thinking about, wait a minute, what if you're, traveling abroad? What if you're, in France or in Italy or something like that, and they have a particular carrier over there, and you're like, okay, well, once I'm out of the country, I'm going to only use, say, my business line, which is tied to the same phone. And then you can differentiate in between two numbers. And that way you don't have to always give everyone your main number.
Yeah.
You can have your business phone and your personal phone be the same device. You don't necessarily have to carry around two phones. And plus, one good feature about this is when you get a call or a notification or thing, it'll tell you which number it's coming to. So that will help you filter out things. You'll say if you set up a online survey or something, and you're getting telemarketers or something, you're going to, but you still want to take the survey. Well, you might give them the number that you more likely don't use, and
sim.
just know, yeah, there you go, the crap sim. That's a new term coming here on Tech Habit Weekly. Guys, stay tuned. So, so. We can see what happens from there about having dual SIMs in your phone, and other than that, I can't see too many uses for your average Joe using it. Like I said, unless you're gonna try to, I guess, live a double life using the same phone or something like that. That's about the only thing. Now, one thing I found peculiar about this particular phone, it's called the Exynos with the chip anyway, 5 octa, but that's to not really be confused with an octa core, because apparently it's two. Now it's going to sound really weird. Apparently it's two 4-core chips that are fused together that make it that way. So it's not a true 8-core. It's almost like a dual core processor with 4 threads, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And but this is an international version of this particular phone of the Galaxy S4, and I don't know why, but normally the international versions of the Samsung smartphones and most smartphones in general usually boast better speeds than the American or the U.S. versions as well. And I don't really understand that, because there's a lot of power users and a lot of people buy things just specifically off spec, and I'm not sure what they're going to do about it now. What I'm wondering is, how's that market more likely going to use those specs versus U.S. and carriers over here in North America? I'm just not sure. And then you got to think about different LTE bands and speeds and things like that are available here that may or may not be available over there. So dual SIM, it's just something that I can see people using for a business use, less casually, but there's a lot of people that may use it out there. A lot of people never heard of it. So Samsung Galaxy S4 dual SIM, check it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to make me want to buy the phone. Like, dude, I could have a phone with 2 SIMs? Yeah, sign me up. Yeah, no, I mean, this is not even really going to appeal to a lot of different people. But like you said, for the person that maybe works at home or something, they have like their own home business, and they want to not have 2 phones, not have to set up Google Voice or anything, but be able to have one SIM card take some numbers, or like store one of your numbers, and then the other take another, so you just have one phone, live peace and harmony. There's a few people that could appeal to. And I mean, as far as all the performance goes, as far having international performance generally be faster than us right here in the United States, I'm honestly not sure why that is. I mean, if you guys in the comments maybe you know something about this, be sure to let us know, because that's something that you guys could even teach us. So we'd be all for that.
Right.
So I mean, overall, not a huge deal about this phone, but something to make headlines and make some people want the phone. So. Now, moving on to the last story we have for today, the Moto X launch on August 23rd for all 4 major U.S. carriers is, this is a rumor, so a big rumor. So, Dontae, do you think this sounds true? I mean, we've talked on this show in the past about this very phone, and it seemed that it was tend to be pretty much up there. Everyone kind of wanted it, and so, do you think that we'll see this?
With the coming press and the things that I've seen, different articles and news stories about this particular phone, I can very well see that happen, only because there's been so much media coverage over it, and it's not a secret now. It's not like the next generation iPhone. No one really knows anything about it. There's nothing but speculation. But this phone has been tested. It's been seen, and the next thing is to go ahead and launch. And one thing they have to do, they have to strategize about when to come out. That's why these companies have specific release dates for their products. Now, there is a quote unquote good and bad time to release a phone. And right now, I think it's a very good time, only because well, what else has come out now? There's been variants of phones, Galaxy S Mini, things like that, HTC One Mini,
Galaxy S4 with 2 SIMs.
exactly, things like that, and to switch gears just 1 second over to Apple, that's why I think the anticipation for their phones are always higher, because you're getting that phone. And once that phone comes out, it's like, wow, okay, not, well, I've got that phone, but then they've got this version and that version and this version and this version and this version and this version, but it's all released around the same day. And to me, with this particular phone coming out, I mean, it's got some very good features. And the things that I've seen, I've given it flack before, but right now it seems like it's going to be a pretty stable phone. I've heard different people that say they were going to get rid of their Samsung Galaxy S4 for that particular phone. Now, there's one question that I have for you, though. Do you think this phone is enough to save Motorola, from the devices that they haven't been bringing out?
I don't know. I mean, this phone, pretty much in my mind, I think it's either going to sail or it's just going to sink. I mean, right away. There's going to be a lot of people that buy it and love it, or there's going to be a lot of people that buy it and you'll start seeing them on eBay. So, I mean, it's hard to say if this is going to put Motorola back up top. It kind of reminds me of like back in the day with like the Palm Pre and the Palm Pixie. How Palm just kept like hyping this phone up. Everyone wanted it was going to be an iPhone killer, and then it sank. And then it did it again, and then it kept sinking. So it's really hard. I mean, this phone does have a lot of cool features. I mean, like all like the always-on technology where you can always just talk to it and have to do something. I was watching Twitter the other day, and Leo Laporte had one. He just flick his wrist and it launches the camera. Things that are cool, but things that I personally wouldn't use every day wouldn't make me want a phone, despite how convenient some of those features might be. So whether it's enough to save Motorola, it's really hard to say. I don't really know. Like I said, I wouldn't buy the phone. And I think the price, what I've seen online, what I've read, is going to be, I think, like $299 or something close to that. I'm not quite sure. I mean, have you seen a price for it, or would you pay for it?
That's the same price that I saw was $299 as well. And for that, yeah, I wouldn't do it. Only because, and I'm only saying that because I'm thinking, I mean, you guys got to realize that smartphones cost every bit of almost $700. When I look at a smartphone, I pretty much look at it as $649, so $650 for your smartphone pretty much. And that $299 price point is more likely going to be with a 2-year activation and things like that. So as of right now, that's one of the highest priced phones right now. I mean, you can still get an iPhone 5, for $200 at its launch. Yeah. And Samsung Galaxy S4, same thing. So these are flagship phones, premium products and things like that, where if you're going over and beyond, I think you have to bring a little more, to the fight than the same jab that you started in with. I mean, definitely, they're more polished. It looks clean. I've seen the feature of it always being on, be able to take the voice commands and things like that. But you have to realize what's going to happen with your battery if that's always on, and things like that. But we'll have to see what happens in the coming future about that to see if that's actually released when they say, and go from there. No, I'm sorry. Just now, I'm just getting a source that now I did see a price that said $299, but apparently the price is $199. On a confirmed source now. So that
could be maybe for
manageable.
like different storage options or something.
Maybe, and there's still some speculations and some things about that phone that I'm not too sure about as well. Even with doing the coverage on that phone, there's still some gray areas, and companies do that. They like to have they don't like to give you everything at once. So that's what's going to happen with that. But if it's going to be around the same price of everything else, as far as starting a new 2-year activation and things like that, then you're right there in the competition with every other carrier
that's
and every
better,
other manufacturer. So I could see that. I could see people switching because it's going to cost them the same if they're going to get an iPhone on AT&T or a Galaxy S4 on T-Mobile. Things like this will be the same price pretty much. So moving on, I have an article here. I don't know if anybody's really knows about this, but the FBI here in the United States can remotely activate any Android laptop's microphone. And of course, if you can activate the microphone, what they're doing, they're trying to listen in on things. So basically, it says here, and this is a huge article coming from the Wall Street Journal, it says the FBI taps hacker tactics to spy on its suspects. Law enforcement officials in the U.S. are expanding the use of tools routinely used by computer hackers to gather information on subjects, bringing the criminal wiretap into the cyber age. And as we know, to get a wiretap at someone's house on their phone or something like that is a government order that they have to be issued through the government down to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and to be able to implement, suspicious activity and things like that. And they've used those countermeasures to find hackers and, people doing, cyber crimes and things like that, credit card fraud and things like that. And even drugs, as a matter of fact. But my thing is, to me, that's a huge invasion of privacy because, a wiretap is something that that's an invasion of privacy as well. But you have to realize wiretaps have, a protocol and things to go through and to be able to do that. Now, if they just think that you may or may not be saying something, and most microphones, you got to realize, on laptops are around the same spot where their web camera is. So to me, if that's going to be the case, are they able to access your web camera and see what you're doing at any given time? Right. I would see that, and me, I don't know if they want to tap me. They can actually. They might get a good laugh because a lot of things I watch sound like, I'm here to Comic Weekly. We're going to get it every day and night. That's how they do it. So, but for a person that, if you're running a business or something like that, and, you got a lot of personal information out there, they may or may not be tapping into your records and, and listening to things that you're saying. You have to realize, we put a lot of badges and things on people, as far as government officials and F.B.I. and CIA and things like that. But you got to realize there's still regular people with regular common interests. I could just, if I want to be nosy and see what's going on with the neighbor down the street, and if all I got to do is click a button and see what's going on, there you go. So that to me is where the line kind of gets, crossed in between that, because to me, with this article breaking, and this is from the Wall Street Journal, so, that's huge news. So with that breaking, you have to, you ask yourself, what else are they doing, because they don't exactly have to release this information. And you got to realize there's, I'm sure, a gang of the features and things that they've done that they're not going to release that's classified information. So how would you feel, if someone did that?
I would not like that at all. I mean, it'd be kind of creepy if, like, I'm just sitting here on my computer and I look over and all of a sudden I see a little green light next to my webcam. It's like,
right.
What are you doing?
My monitors are off. What's going on here? Right.
I mean, it is. I mean, I don't care if it's like the President of the United States or whoever. I don't want you just turning on my computer. I mean, I could be doing nothing wrong. I could be over here playing a piano or doing some like jumping jacks. I don't want people to see that. So, right. I mean, and those people that do that, I'm sure they wouldn't want that turned back on them. Like if there's some government official that's, like looking at someone, they wouldn't want that turned back on them. So,
right. Well, you got to realize it said that in the article here that it was going to only use those countermeasures for people that are suspected of being hackers. We got to realize what's a word we throw around here a lot: Hackintosh. Just because they don't understand what we're talking about and things of this particular build, does that give them the right to investigate?
Apparently.
I don't want to be on Tech Habit Weekly episode 9 and hear a in the background. And I'm like, no one coughed, it's coming from me being surveyed, on the other end of my webcam, I'm not sure if I'm being broadcast to you guys or being broadcast to their FBI surveillance van, which I don't know. There's been a flowers truck sitting out here for about 3 weeks. I don't know what's going on. I don't know who's been ordering that many flowers, but you can understand what I'm saying. As you get that, because we're always talking about, hacktivations and Hackintosh and things like that. Well, you keep throwing words like that around, people are going to get suspicious because they don't understand what's going on. So, I don't know. I mean, I understand that there's a fine line in between, preventive measures like, okay, well, these guys are always talking about it, so we bust them before, anything happened, versus not being knowledgeable enough to have the grounds to intrude on privacy. So, let us know down in the comments, and also let us know if you guys are in different countries that don't have that rule and things like that, because this is a U.S. issue. Yeah. How would you feel about your privacy and things like that if your government officials and figures of authority could access your files and access your, camera and microphone to listen to things that you say and see what you see?
Yeah, and one thing I want to add too is, I mean, this article specifically states laptops, like an actual physical laptop. But I mean, what stops them from accessing your phone too? I mean, I'm sure it's right up there. I mean, it could be done just as easily. I mean, Android's all open source. It's really easy to access. Anyone that has, say, for example, like a jailbroken iPhone, if they don't change their password, you can SSH into it that easily. I mean, people can access these things, and it's just a matter of time before this article widens up and to say that they're watching your phones as well. And the phones, they don't have a like the MacBook does, or like most laptops do, like a little power light that tells you when it's on or what's recording. This doesn't have that, so this could be on right now for all I know. And government's listened to Tech Habit Weekly episode 8. You're welcome. Right. So. It's hard to see, like Dontae said. Let us know in the comments what you think about your privacy, if it could extend onto something like a phone, or if one day you just looked over and your microphone was being on, someone's listening to it, how you would feel. So that pretty much wraps up the main stories we had to talk about today. Now, as always, we have some delightful, delicious, tantalizing, taste bud tingling treats for you today. Dontae, yes. That hand lotion, yes. Dontae, kick us off with your tech treat.
Oh, man. Today's tech treat is actually a news application. Now, normally I want you guys to come to Tech Habit Weekly until we get an iOS app, but I can tell you that this is a very good app for a person like me who's always out and on the go and things like that. This app is called News 360, and it's available in the Apple App Store. It's a very good app. Basically, what you can do is you make a very small profile, and luckily most people have social media networks and things like that where they can just tap it right into their Twitter account or their Facebook and things like that, and then you can filter out different different categories that you would like such as technology. Of course, that was my number one pick, and finance and like automotive and things like politics. That, fashion, politics, things like that. FBI surveillance van in front of your house that says 1-800 call flowers. Wait a minute, somebody. Oh no, he's not coming here. Okay, no big deal. But I thought he might have tapped into something. But anyway, get out now, they're trying to kill you. But this is a very good app. I use it on my phone every day. It's actually on my iPad mini as well, and you can actually access web content via your desktop or laptop as well to set these different parameters. I love it. I mean, I find different news stories that are just interesting, or this just little basically mini tech treats in there as well, and of course here, we're talking about our tech treats and one place for tech and one place for Apple and things like that. And of course our tech treats are the only treats that you don't have to get diabetes, high blood pressure, and have to count calories. So very exactly. very, very, very good treat. I mean, guys, check it out. It's free in Apple App Store. News 360. Check it out for all your different web content and things like that.
Absolutely. Now, as you guys know, I was sick this past week, so I wasn't really doing much work. I was wasting time in bed, playing some games, and I was watching Twit, and I saw Leo Laporte. If you guys watch Twit at all, I'm sure you do. He loves The Simpsons Tapped Out, and so I thought I'd give it a try. And it's addictive. I mean, I used to watch Simpsons a lot. Like back maybe 10 years ago, I was growing up. A lot, and ever since that I kind of died off. But this game right here really, it kind of takes me back and gets me familiar with all my Simpsons characters again. But here's the game basically right here. What happened was Homer, as you all know, is an idiot, and he works at the nuclear power plant, and so he was playing on his MyPad, is what they called it in the game, and so he wasn't watching what he was doing, wasn't paying attention, and he blew up the whole city. So now basically what you have to do is rebuild the city, and so it's kind of like a Sim City sort of deal, but not as involved. So here we have like my city here. You can pan around. You can see there's people like walking around doing stuff. For example, I have Lisa Simpson playing the saxophone. I have Ned Flanders taking a jog, and every character has their own different things that they can do. Like, for example, Homer can lounge in the pool, or he can go eat at Krusty Burger. And so all these tasks take real time. So say, for example, I want Homer to go eat at the Krusty Burger. It takes literally 30 human minutes. Like, it takes 30 minutes for him to accomplish that task. And once he does, then you can tell him to do something else. But there's really big tasks, too, that last 24 hours. So you literally have to tell him to do it, put your stuff down, do other things on it, and then come back one day later and keep going. So you earn more XP, which lets you build more things, which gets you a bigger city. Now, I will warn you that this game is free. However, you can buy donuts, which help get you bigger things, make you spend less time, so you can have that 24-hour task complete immediately instead. So there's a huge incentive, and this is a freemium game in that it's free, but what they get you is on the extras. So me personally, I'm very proud to say I haven't spent a single penny on this game yet, but I have been enticed deeply. So check out this game. Definitely, it's free. It's a lot of fun, and really, Matt Groening is his name. He really keeps the personality of all his Simpsons characters in this game. It's done very well. Lots of fun, and so it's a nice nice treat that could work you in some cavities. So that's pretty much all we have.
I like that. You know what? I like that term you use, freemium. That's like the crack cocaine of applications because, you know, they rope you in with the freeness of it, and then now you're candy crushing and spent, you know, $400 you know, in one night because you ran out of moves or something. And that's a personal experience, not the money part, but my girlfriend loves Candy Crush. And sometimes she puts the iPad down, she sits on the couch, and she's just like, I'm like, what's wrong with you? And she's like, I'm out of moves. I'm done. I got the win. You know, and I've already got a few lives from some people from Facebook, you know, so yeah, that's very cool, you know, but it's a very good marketing strategy. I think, you know, you rope people in, you know, but hey, it's free. You can play it as much as you want for free, but you know, they'll make certain scenarios where, oh, man, if I just spent 99 cents, yeah. So that's good. But then now you're itching and scratching and then going into the grocery store trying to buy iTunes cards and things like that and Google Play cards, you know. But yeah, very good deal. You know, it looks like a very good game. You know, the Simpsons tapped out. You know, I think everyone should try these tech treats. You know, and go ahead, get them. Get a whole you know, handful. You know. Just take 2, you know, they're small. Go ahead. There's no problem.
Yeah, so go ahead and watch the past episodes. We have tech treats on every single episode, so knock yourselves out. But that's going to wrap it up for episode 8 of Tech Habit Weekly. Thank you guys very much for joining us, those of you who watch us live. Dontae, huge thanks to you. Huge shout out to Terrell, our producer, making sure all the shots look nice and interact with each other, because we'd be fumbling all over ourselves if we didn't have him. So thank you guys once again. Be sure to stay tuned for the YouTube version of this. Also in iTunes, just type in Dontae Harris or Bob Roche or Tech Habit, and you'll find it. Subscribe. We have video and audio versions. Those of you that have lower bandwidth or don't have time to actually watch, audio only is available. So thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you next week on episode 9.